Sure. My name is Jay Mason. I'm the chair of the Lowell Sustainability Council. We've been together since 2007, I think. Our first iteration was the Green Building Commission. We updated that a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, to have a more focused approach to sustainability in all its forms. Before we were kind of, I don't want to say pigeonholed, but we were focused on buildings, and there's really an awful lot more to sustainability than just thinking about buildings. There's economics, there's the socio-political side of sustainability. So it's not just about the environment, it's not just about buildings.
Great. Okay, and then the second question was about why Earth Day is important to be celebrating, especially now with it being the 50th anniversary.
Sure. Yeah, I think we've got to highlight a connection to the Earth. You know, this gives us a chance to take a step back and think about our roots and the practices that keep us focused on the many interdependent ties between our survival and a healthy planet. You know, you think about what some of the initial groundbreaking leaders like Chief Seattle had to say about sustainability. He said, and I'm going to turn my head and read his quote so I get it right: "Man does not weave this web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself." I think that's such a beautiful quote, and it's from the 1800s. I mean, it goes back a long time. He was born in 1786, so he probably spoke that. He died in 1866. So I mean, this is a little before, you know, Rachel Carson and you know, the folks that are contemporaries now that are talking about sustainability. It's before that time by a long shot.
Great. And then, so the next question kind of ties between Earth Day and currently right now the pandemic, and looking at how, you know, are there any ties between climate change, the pandemic, and how people are seeing, you know, maybe some positives and maybe some negatives about how the pandemic is impacting the Earth?
Sure. Well, the one thing that I think we have to use here, understanding that, to answer your question, yeah, there's absolutely huge connections between the problems that we're getting biologically with viruses spreading around and dealing with a planet that's getting warmer and more susceptible to airborne viruses, respiratory viruses. We're getting more used to that because the ground is more fertile for those kinds of problems, because our planet is warming and warming, and the more heat that we generate here on the surface of the planet, the more issues there are going to be with humidity and holding moisture in the atmosphere where it can dump more severely. You know, so you've got rainstorms that are just so much crazier than when I was a kid. But the issue of the pandemic and its relationship to climate change, I think, for me, takes me back to that first Earth Day. I was there. I was an 11-year-old kid, and I made a little poster, and it said, like 90% of the other posters there, it said, "Let's stop pollution before it stops us." And I had a little bag of little pollution-oriented things I'd found in my neighborhood, you know, some oil stain, whatever, you know, little things. And I felt really excited about having a chance to do something and to participate and be part of something good. And I think the fact that 20 million people came out to celebrate at that time, or to participate, to protest, it affected a lot of change. We saw in the next 2 or 3 years with President Nixon, a passage of the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act. So it was a huge boost to forward progress in the area of sustainability, in the area of climate correction. And so I see that potential now. I wish that we could somehow learn to get up to speed with virtual protest, with virtual celebration, because that's what we have to work with now. That's a tool that we don't understand yet, and we're not used to yet, and it's uncomfortable still. But I think it is a stepping stone toward what happened 50 years ago. We've got to take that same kind of approach and link the reality of the pandemic to the reality of the health of our planet in general, and move forward in a way that addresses the causing factors that have brought those to bear on us, and give us a chance to, they also at the same time give us a way to move forward. We have to find a way to move forward.
Great. And then kind of branching off of that, on pollution. So transportation has been something that has drastically decreased now that people are staying at home. Do you have anything that we could like briefly touch upon there?
It just reminds me, I'm reading a book called Drawdown, and my next chapter, I'm excited about it. I want to tell Cormac about it because it's electric vehicles. And each chapter in this book have to deal with one potential piece of action, a potential work item that we can take on to reduce our carbon emissions. And I'm in the section now, I'm just starting the section about transportation. So I wish I'd already read the whole section. I'd be more fluent and have something more insightful to say. But I think that, you know, representing something what like 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions that are out there in because of transportation, you know, we've got a chance to look at how much that issue has gone away because people aren't driving around as much. And if we can understand a little bit about how those photographs that they've taken from space, looking at how much less pollution there is on the highway areas and in the city urban areas where transportation is huge, now that there's much less of it, we can really see the benefit. So maybe we can take a lesson from that. That would be a good next step, I think.
So moving forward, that kind of draws into another question, using the same word, draws, about, you know, if you have any other documentaries or books like Drawdown to recommend to people to read during their spare time when they're at home.
Well, my favorite is Bill McKibben's book about the death of nature. I think that came out in '83, maybe '84, somewhere back in the early '80s. But it's still prescient today. It still has volumes to say about where we're at and what we need to do to think a little more holistically about our environment and the nature of our environment. I'd also encourage people to read Friedman. Thomas Friedman's written some great books about the environment. My favorite is Hot, Flat, and Crowded, about the state of environmental politics and geopolitics, really, about how the globe as a system is affected by our inability really to deal with climate change, and you know, offering lots of potential solutions on how to move forward with that. And I'll go back just briefly to that book Drawdown again. There are 80 different exercises, examples of what you can do to draw down the carbon emissions. And if we could take those on, I think we'd have a chance at getting to the 1.5 degree temperature rise that scientists say that we need to adhere to. And it seems really exciting on the one hand that we technically understand there are ways to fix the problem. And then of course it's frustrating on the other hand to see that there are just the will to make these decisions reality is just, you know, still lagging from where it needs to be.
And then lastly, to wrap it up, because Earth Day is it's less than a week away, it's going to be April 22nd. Are there any recommendations that you have for people to be able to celebrate while still being at home?
I hope to participate in a social distance appropriate ceremony I'm going out to Tyler Park, which is right, I'm in the neighborhood of Tyler Park at my home here. And so I'm going to, as I would on any Earth Day, I'm going to pick up trash. And I hope to get together, with some folks 10 feet apart and have some conversations about what Earth Day means to us. I think it really gives a chance for a, a preparation to getting something done that moves us forward. I think in the effort that we all, certainly at the Sustainability Council, are in to make a change and render a better tomorrow, I think you have to first recognize that as difficult as change uh, seems to be to make happen, it is possible, and we can do it. And the hardest thing to do is take that first step. So just, I have no idea who I'll end up talking with next Wednesday out in the park, and I have no idea what will come out of our small gathering. And it's going to be small. It's not going to be a, massive undertaking of lots and lots of people. But if we can realize and recognize the power that we have to make small changes, we can then ultimately, leverage those small changes into a bigger framework. And it's a matter of keeping the forward progress that is critical to success in any field. And I think if we focus on those small successes, we'll get to the big ones. We can't worry about the things that are earth turning. We have to start, with the little things in our backyard. And that's where I hope to be on Wednesday.